Today I'd like to share about a disturbing reality that really kind of marks our scene in today's world and really causes a lot of us to wonder, and that is the reality of what we call eco-martyrs, or those people that are put to death, eliminated, assassinated, intimidated because of their stand on the environment. Recently, Juan Lopez, who had two daughters, Claudia and Julia, and a wife, Telma, was a community leader in Tocoa in northeastern Honduras. Juan was on September 14th, not too long ago, was gunned down as he was leaving Mass. Uh, Juan was a member of the Municipal Committee for the Defense of the Common and Public Good of Tocoa. A wonderful man, very much involved in the community, very well respected person, and again, just going to Mass and gunned down as he's leaving Mass. And you say, well, why was he? Uh, the conflict that Juan was involved with involved commercial interests and national politicians in Honduras. The commercial interest wanted development. They wanted to bring progress to in the department of Colon, near where Juan lived, and Juan was opposed to this progress uh, because the issue that was involved was what they call open pit iron oxide mining. And this mining is very profitable, obviously, for the developers. They wanted to continue to do it. The problem with this open pit mining is that it was threatening the Guapano and San Pedro river water, and that river water was used by the Lenca community for their drinking water, for their fishing, and for agriculture. So, on the one hand, you have progress, development, business, wanting to pursue their aims, and you can see, what they're about. They want to have more mining, they want to have more development, but a lot of times, unfortunately, these businesses, and of course they're pursuing profit and they're creating jobs and doing good things, obviously in communities, which is great. But the problem is the environmental damage, unfortunately, that is left behind. And in many of these countries, they don't have the strict environmental laws that we might have in our own country. And of course, even in our own country, there's this back and forth about, well, how strict should these laws be? Are the environmentalists too strict in terms of the laws that they propose? Are there too many regulations? You have to have all of these assessments done. Sometimes there are species that there's not too many of a certain animal or a certain bird or an insect, and all of a sudden, well, you can't develop that because of these restrictions. Of course, business interests are like, they go crazy with this. Well, this is too many restrictions, too many government regulations, too much bureaucracy, and we just want a simpler path. We want to get in there, do our business, and leave. Unfortunately, with open pit mining, there are many negative consequences to the environment. Now, if you're a member of the Lenca community, an indigenous community, and you need this water for your farming, for your drinking, and it's poisoned by the runoff from the mining operation, all of a sudden there are unacceptable levels of pollutants in your water. Well, that's going to become an issue for you. And Juan was aware of the issue, and he was fighting against it. From the point of view of the business, well, this like a community, it's, too bad about them. They're a smaller community. We're going to bring jobs to the area. We're going to make the area rich. We're going to help the economy. We're going to help the government. We're going to be paying taxes to the government. We're going to make the government a lot stronger. And in some of these situations, obviously, the government is trying to work with them because they can use the revenue that this business is going to be generating for their economy. And you can see that point of view as well. So the question becomes a moral one. Should this development be done at the expense of this community? And in many cases, these are indigenous communities. They are not politically powerful communities. They are minority communities. And so their rights are not really respected. But there are those, of course, in the area like Juan who would fight and say, no, we must respect these people. Lopez and others have demanded the resignation of Mayor Adam Funes Tekoa. And why they had demanded his resignation, that there was a concern about bribery money for given to Mel Zelaya. Mel was eventually ousted. And so he was involved in this video as a conduit for this bribery money that was given to Zelaya. And there were also, of course, conflicts with the mayor about mining projects, hydroelectric projects. And these projects were going to take place in the protected area in the Montana de Botaderos Carlos Escalaras National Park. So in this national park, they wanted to develop it because they found that there could be some mining done there. And of course, that would profit them, and also a hydroelectric project that would bring power to the area. But of course, one is saying, well, wait a minute, this is a national park, it's a protected area, we shouldn't be developing it. And of course, in our own country, we have the same conflict. Should these parks that are set aside also be used for resource development, and should we drill for oil and natural gas and in these government lands, basically, that are restricted? So again, these conflicts arise, and Juan was saying no, that should not be done. Very similar, Juan's death to the death of Berta Caceres. She was martyred in 2016. And again, she was trying to protect the rights of indigenous people and protect the land from this exploitation. Now, could the mining be done in a way where there wouldn't be as much runoff? It could be contained. In many areas, of course, that is the procedure that's taken. But of course, that cuts down on your profit. It's more time consuming to do it that way. But it does protect the area. So could that be some sort of solution? Yes, but of course, mining companies don't want to do that because, again, it cuts down on their profit, and it will take longer to do that. Juan was an exceptional man. His anchor was his faith, very much a believer in Jesus and the church. He believed in the preferential option for the poor. He participated in groups that were involved with liberation theology and helping the poor and the oppressed and recognizing the rights of indigenous people. Pope Francis deplored his killing when he was made aware of it. The Bishops' Conference of Honduras said Lopez is a true disciple and missionary who defended the environment. And the Most Reverend Henry Ruzol, the Bishop of the Diocese of Trujillo, said simply, he followed Christ. The Global Witness group, which looks at this situation in terms of the eco-activists, 196 of them have been killed in 2023. So this is not an isolated example. Most of them were killed because they tried to protect the planet. Extractive industries like the mining industry use different ways of dealing with those who are opposed to them. Sometimes, as in the case of Juan, they use violence. Other times there is intimidation, smear campaigns against them, and criminalization where they become the criminals. It's the mining companies that are actually committing the crime, but they have ways of turning the crime against the activist and then jailing the activist for the crime of opposing their extractive industries. 70% of those murders that Global Witness speaks about took place in just 4 countries: Brazil, Colombia, Honduras, and Mexico. Almost half of those who were killed were members of indigenous communities who were standing up for the rights of their communities. Honduras, in terms of the population, had the highest percentage of those who were killed because of the lower population in the other countries. Juan was under the protection of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights because of the many threats against his life. But even that could not stop this assassin. In the year 2019, he received the Tella Moffat Human Rights Award from Institute of Policy Studies in Washington because of his advocacy for human rights and for his work for the environment. Gregorio Vasquez, the Jesuit of the National Apostolic Council of the Society of Jesus in Honduras, demanded a thorough investigation. And he said that investigation should be assisted by competent international entities. There's a lot of corruption in the Honduran Public Prosecutor's Office, and Father Vasquez felt that this death would not be followed up and the investigation would not be complete because of the corruption in terms of the Honduran prosecutors, and felt that if there was an independent group, an outside group that would investigate it, it would be a fairer investigation and would get to the root of the problem. The president of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, was elected on a reform platform. However, her husband was implicated in the video about the bribery with the mining company. So again, it seems that even though she was for reform, later on after election this video came out, it seems like the family is certainly tainted by the corruption. S.B. Benegas, who is president of the Coordinating Board of Popular Organizations of the AGWAN, says very frankly and openly, we do not trust the justice system in Honduras. The controversy that was involved, the mayor was seeking approval for a power generation project proposed by Grupo EM, which is the parent company of the Los Pineros mining company. So you have these different companies involved. One is involved in mining, one's involved in power. Lopez and other environmental defenders have worked against this. They said, you can't do this, it's a national park, it's wrong to do it. They worked against the mining, how it was destroying the livelihood and the life, in some cases, of the indigenous community. Ms. Benegas called on President Castro to act against drug trafficking and put an end to attack on defenders of the environment and civil rights in the region. So, interrelated problems, the business problem, but also a huge problem with drug trafficking in the area. 196 defenders of the earth, water, and indigenous rights were murdered in 2023. And since December of 2015, 1,500 eco-defenders have been murdered since the adoption of the Paris Agreement. The biggest industry in terms related to the assassinations and the deaths has been the mining industry. A very important, I think, issue for us to be aware of. We speak of martyrdom, as those people who are killed because of their faith. They are witnesses to Christ. Obviously, Juan Lopez was a witness to Christ. He felt very deeply that his faith demanded that he protect the environment. He felt that his faith called him to make sure that the air, the water, and the soil was pure for all, particularly those who were part of the indigenous communities who have been exploited for centuries. He felt that this came from his following of Jesus, that Jesus would want him to stand up for those who were poor, those who are on the margins of society, those whom society kind of pushes to the side and neglects, and to make a statement that it's not the dollar or the money that comes first, it's people's lives that come first. And Juan would say, this is what Jesus wants me to do. So Juan stood up for his faith. He became a martyr. And I think we have to be aware that this is going on, do everything we can to make sure that this does not happen to anyone who wants to stand up for the environment and make our world a better, safer, and a cleaner place.